Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome to What Moves You. So, Sisley, welcome to What Moves You. I'm super excited to have you today. For those that don't know you, know that she's been on my list of dream guests for quite some time, so it's super cool to get to finally sit with you. For those that don't know you, who maybe aren't familiar with your story, and even for me, I feel like everyone or a lot of people that get into this work, that get into the wellness space, have a really powerful, personal story that got them there. So I'd love to hear yours and your background and how you came to be working as an acne nutritionist.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited to have this conversation. Like we were just saying, I think 15-year-old us would have loved to have this kind of
Yeah,
information years ago, right?
for
So
sure.
yeah, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sisley and I am the acne nutritionist. So I've been a registered holistic nutritionist for about 10 years now. So
That's
practicing in
so
the world
cool.
of holistic nutrition. Yeah, it's been incredibly rewarding. And my main focus is around acne. So I take more of a holistic and functional approach around acne, meaning that we're
Hmm.
looking around the root cause of why it's happening, how we can clear it naturally without the use of harsh topicals and medication. Because I know so many people out there are, they go through this and then they've kind of been left with no other options. And I'm one of those people. And
Yeah.
so it's now my life's mission to help women from around the world to help clear their skin naturally. So I'm so excited to chat all things skin today.
Yes, that's so cool. And how did you, before we get into how did you get into holistic nutrition, when was the light bulb moment for you of this is internal work that needs to be done, right? I think it's often presented as this kind of last resort thing, just like you said. And I'm curious for you, what was the moment where you realized where it was internal work that had to be done versus just things you were putting on your skin?
It was honestly probably about 10 years ago when I was 20, and I was going through an incredibly tough transitional time. I was living
Mm-hmm.
in Germany. I was doing a year abroad. I was working an internship that was quite stressful, not making
Yeah.
a ton of money, partying on the weekends, not
Mm-hmm.
eating as nourishing as I now know. At the time
Yeah.
I thought I was eating healthy, but I really wasn't. So I was incredibly stressed. I wasn't treating my body properly, and I had really bad cystic acne. It was really,
Yeah.
really bad. And every time I'd go to the doctor, I was just pushed medication after medication. I tried swapping my birth controls, all the
Yeah.
the packs so
All
many
the things.
times. And yeah, it actually just really started to affect my mental health. And
Yeah,
I
I
think
bet.
the most frustrating thing was realizing that there was something deeper going on, but that nobody was listening to me. And I
Yeah.
didn't know who to turn to. I didn't know who to talk to. The creams weren't working, the skincare wasn't working, nothing was working. And
Yeah.
I had to think, there must be something out there that I'm missing. And that's kind of what set me up to go down this path. I ran into a girl who just graduated from holistic nutrition school in Canada, in Vancouver, where I live.
Cool.
And I immediately thought, okay, I'm going to learn something here. And I did.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the light bulb moment for me to go into this field of work.
That's so cool. And I think it's so relatable to so many women in general listening right now, regardless of whether their struggle is acne or mental health or endometriosis. I mean, there's so many things in which I feel like women find themselves unfortunately stuck without very many resources and without any
Mhm.
answers. And I think so many can relate. And to think back, your intro to holistic nutrition this, I feel like now it's just now being recognized and popular, and it was a slow burn. It took a long time. I mean, at 15, I'm 23 for context. I didn't even know that there was such a thing as holistic nutrition. And so to think that this is something that you found 10 years ago that was still so new and so untalked about, what a life moment, a universe sending you signs of oh my gosh, this is where you're supposed to go, and now you're being able to help so many people with it. So maybe I'll start there for people that Cicely, what is holistic nutrition? I have never heard of this in my entire life. I didn't even know nutrition could be holistic. What is all of this about?
Yeah, and to your point, I think it's so cool that wellness and healthy eating is so trendy right now.
Yeah.
Like it is the most incredible thing to witness. I wish I'd had that at a younger age. But it's so cool because we have so many resources now. But yeah, so for those of you who don't know what holistic nutrition means, so basically we have nutrition, we have nutritionists, dietitians. That's technically where we're looking at how can food support or hinder the body, right? But
Hmm.
typically we're looking on how can we support your optimal health, and that can be
Yeah.
different for whatever your goals are. And we're looking at how does food impact those imbalances in the body. From a holistic nutrition standpoint, we're looking at things more holistically. So we're looking at, not only does it matter what you're eating, but also how you're eating it. So we take into consideration lifestyle, your mindset. So a lot of those things that kind of encircle or like, you
Hmm.
know, are around what you're actually eating, how is that impacting your health? And so my work is very much ingrained in not only what you're eating. We don't put a huge emphasis on restriction. We put more of
Yeah.
an emphasis on what you can include in your diet to support clear skin. But then also, what are the other things that could be contributing to making your skin worse or could be helpful in your journey from more like a lifestyle supplementation? We look at skincare as well, and mindset is a big, big factor also. And I think this is like the missing piece with acne is so many people are thinking, okay, I need to cut out gluten, egg, sugar, dairy. I need to get my monthly facials. I need to do a chemical peel. I need to get this tretinoin cream when
Yeah.
really there's so much more going on. Like acne is just a signal from the body that something is
Yeah.
internally out of balance, and it's not just food or it's not just topical skincare. We really have to look at everything holistically.
No, for sure. And for someone who was maybe in your same boat where you were, thinking, well, I am eating healthy, like what what would you compare, I guess, what you were perhaps eating back then, whether you want to talk about like the food itself or the way that you prepared it or what have you, versus what you kind of know now to be, oh shoot, like I thought this was good, but I was actually shooting myself in the foot here.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what's so tough is a lot of people these days actually are eating what I would consider very healthy. But
Mm-hmm.
again, if you have all these other missing pieces with your acne journey, that can still be enough to not solve it, right?
Yeah.
But for context, when I was younger, what I thought was eating healthy was I was eating a lot of quote unquote healthy whole foods, so eating a lot of fruits and veggies, but I was not eating blood sugar balancing meals. So this
Mm.
was a big thing I learned in my 20s that was greatly impacting my energy. And I think a lot of people are quite aware of that now. But just to help everybody understand, it's really important for us to have a balanced plate at each meal. So making sure we're looking at are you having enough protein and fiber to help balance out the carbohydrates as well. And so I was eating a lot of like rice with cucumber and soy sauce. I was 20. Like I was like living
Yeah.
paycheck to paycheck. Where now I'd love to throw in like some tofu or some chicken to help keep my blood sugar balanced. And what this was
Yeah,
doing is
for
it was
sure.
really just creating hormone imbalances long term, honestly. Like I was having really bad issues with my insulin. It was kind of throwing off my estrogen as well. There's a lot of things going on. Also was not helping my gut health
Yeah.
situation. And I was also probably quite nutrient deficient as well. I was vegan for a very long time. That's not to say there's anything wrong with being vegan, but I do see a lot of people struggle with long-term veganism because we're missing a lot of nutrients that are a bit harder to find. And this is coming from an ex-vegan who used to hate when people said that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there were a lot of things going on for me there. I tried eating gluten-free, but then I ended up just eating a lot of the like processed
Yeah.
corn products, right? Things like that. Um, yeah, so I think it was a really interesting like trial and error journey where there were times in my life where I thought a certain diet or a certain way of eating, like intermittent fasting, for
Mm-hmm.
example, was going to help me, but it actually did the opposite.
Yeah.
So I would say to anyone now who's listening, like eating those balanced meals, eating also in a balanced way throughout the day, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, really, really important for long-term hormone health if you're looking to prevent hormonal acne.
Yeah, for sure. And for someone like I remember being here so many times, and I'm sure you can relate as well, of like being so desperate and so fed up with the situation because more like I feel like a lot of these things, like it's easy to hide. Like if your gut health's not working, like I mean, like there's so much of it that is invisible, but I feel like acne is one of those things that like unfortunately is visible, and it gets so annoying. And so like you try thing after thing. And so for someone who like is listening to us right now and is thinking, oh, you know, well, it's not going to be quick, you know, like it's a long-term game. I often like in my own like day-to-day life when I try and approach these gut health, hormone health things through like this long-term holistic lens, I often get like a little bit of like backlash or like, yeah, well, I want something now, you know? And I'd be curious to know as someone like who works with patients every single day, like to help them along this journey. And they're often probably coming to you from that very like desperate place of just like, I don't know what else to do and I need help. Like, I'd love to hear in your experience what you have brought these people through to help them not only like heal their acne from the inside out, but also like come to approach this in such a place of like, wow, like my body is sending me a message right now, like thank goodness it is, so that I can work towards it. I love to hear kind of how you treat that in your day to day.
Yes, and I'm so aligned with what you just said, where acne is always a signal from the body telling us that something is wrong. But unfortunately, we're taught in the conventional world that we just kind of need to put a band-aid on it, right?
Yeah.
So take medication to temporarily make it go away, and then it just comes back when you come off. Or use this cream that you're going to have to use the rest of your life, and then you're reliant on it, right?
Yeah.
And that can be really frustrating for people because the majority of women that come to me feel like they've quote unquote tried it all, right?
Yeah.
They come to me, they're like, Sisley, I've tried it all. Like, how do I know this is even going to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
You lose trust in
Yeah.
anyone trying to help you with your skin. Fair enough. I've been there. I
Yeah.
totally get it. But what needs to happen with acne, it's pretty clear. It's really just A, finding the root cause of what's triggering it, and B, reducing overall inflammation because acne at its core is an inflammatory issue. So for you, for example, you mentioned you went through SIBO as a result of that acne, right? We see this all the time. It's
Yeah.
because when we have low grade chronic infection like SIBO, it's causing an inflammation response directly to the skin. So
Yeah.
gut issues are actually one of the biggest problems that I solve with my clients because they're one of the easiest ways to trigger inflammation in the skin. We have
For
a
sure.
direct correlation coming from the gut to the skin that also links to the brain. So the gut skin brain axis. So those are always consistently communicating with each other. So basically, if you feel like you've tried it all, it's just that we haven't looked in the right places, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people that come to me as well have been on very restrictive diets, or they've done programs that are maybe focusing on just skincare or just mindset, or again, very restrictive dieting. You know, they've done food sensitivity testing, things like this. But really what we have to figure out is A, what is causing the acne, and B, how can we reduce it? So I have a very unique approach where we're looking at all these ways that we can bring down inflammation, right? So we're looking at the thing with acne is that there are like hundreds of reasons why acne
Yeah.
could be happening, to be
So
honest,
many. Yeah.
right? There's like gut health issues, we've got hormonal changes. Some people are super sensitive to stress. Maybe you're pre PCOS, maybe you have PCOS, maybe you
Yeah.
have something like SIBO, maybe you've just come off the birth control pill, maybe you're pregnant. Like there's so many
So many
reasons,
things.
right?
Yeah.
And maybe it even is just, a poor quality diet and lifestyle change, right? Like when you're really young, like under the age of 20, it is very, very easy to clear your skin with just a few diet and lifestyle changes,
Mm-hmm.
especially because of your age. So when you're really young, you adapt quicker than you would
Yeah.
in your 30s or 40s, right? So there's a lot that we can bring in really early on to make changes, and then we keep those foundational habits long term so that acne doesn't come back, right?
Yeah.
So there's basically, it's important to recognize that there are two types or two reasons why people would have acne. So one is you're genetically acne prone, which I think that's both you and I.
Yes.
Yeah.
For
So
sure.
you yeah, like usually it would be like your parents or your siblings that have also
Mm-hmm.
had acne. And it's just a lot to do with like the skin cell turnover rate and how we deal with inflammation, maybe some other genetic factors like how we methylate, like how we detox, for example.
Yeah.
I have that. I am very genetically acne prone.
Yeah.
And that just means that whenever there's an internal imbalance in the body, it's going to show up in my skin. My skin is going to be the first thing to respond, but it also means it's probably going to be around the last thing to clear until I've resolved the issue internally, which can be very confusing to do on your own if you're not familiar with all of this,
For sure,
right?
for sure.
Yeah. And then the second reason why someone would have acne is more situational. So I see this a lot with kind of more one-off, more serious issues at play. Like, let's say someone has never had acne in their life. They went on the pill for a couple years. They come off, boom, they get post-pill acne, but then it clears after a
Yeah.
couple of months and they never get acne again. Or maybe someone travels to Asia, they pick up a parasite, they didn't know they've had it for years. The acne keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Boom, we find out they have a parasite, we clear it, they never get acne again. So there really are two types of people, and most people are more in the genetically acne prone bucket because it's been a persistent issue their entire life, right?
Yeah.
So my main focus is to help people understand why they have acne in the first place, and then build them a plan to help them understand how they can implement just like really manageable and realistic and attainable
Yeah.
habits to clear their skin. And this is basically everything I've learned over the past 10 years through myself, trial and error, reading research, working with clients, using functional testing. There is a common theme and a method on how we can clear skin without being super restrictive or just throwing a band-aid on it. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And obviously, I am familiar with this just because I've dealt with it. This is the past like
Yeah.
4 years of my life. But for someone who's listening who like has either never heard about it or doesn't have too much experience with it, when we talk about like inflammation, specifically like low grade chronic inflammation, I'd love to give some examples of that and explain perhaps where it comes from, because I know that when I was learning about it for the first time, I was like, what is this nonsense? Like, I'm not inflamed, like, what does that even mean? I don't look puffy. So I'd love to kind of like bring some clarity to what that can look like and the different ways that we, in the world that we live in today, could be chronically like low grade inflamed
For
majority of the
sure.
time.
Yeah, that's such a good question because the word inflammation is getting thrown away around like
Yeah.
left, right, and center, right? Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few common denominators with acne, and they often are like very linked and work together synergistically.
Yeah.
So, inflammation is basically when there's something in the body that's triggering an inflammatory response. So, like, for example, when you get a cut on your finger, your body rushes to have an inflammatory response to that cut to heal it.
Mm-hmm.
That we need inflammation. Like that is healthy. That is normal,
Yeah.
right? But where the problem lies is when we have chronic, constant inflammatory receptors constantly sending signals to areas of the body that obviously it's trying to figure something out or sort something out, but we're not listening, right?
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes I see this again, like I've said, with gut issues. We see a lot of bacterial overgrowth in the gut with acne. These are things like strep, staph. So if you have any kind of history of strep infections, staph infections, even, or even if you've had no digestive issues at all in your entire life, we still see a lot of these, overgrowths in the microbiome.
Yeah.
So what happens when we have these overgrowths or something like SIBO, right? Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, where the bacteria is living in the small intestine where it's not supposed to be. This can send inflammation to the body and to the skin. And I really truly believe that the body is designed to tell us when something is wrong,
Yeah.
right? Like
Really agreed.
we need to listen. Like some of our organs cannot speak. They need to
Yeah.
show us when
Yeah.
something is wrong so we can help it, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of the more like under the radar ways we see inflammation. But in the more traditional sense, like you were talking about, a lot of people don't actually realize that they are struggling with chronic inflammation. So we see this a lot with like women who are intense marathon runners or like do a lot of HIIT workouts. We
Mm-hmm.
see this a lot with people who like drink a lot of coffee or are doing fasting. They're often holding on to a lot of water weight or a lot of like heaviness, and they can see it in their face and in their body, and they just don't feel right, right? It's often
Yeah.
for women, it's very intuitive feeling. Like I just feel like something is
Is wrong.
off, right? I'm going to
Yeah.
bed bloated, I'm waking up bloated. Like there's just constant feeling of quote unquote inflammation. So I'd
Yeah.
say those are kind of the big ones as well. But you can tie all that into as well. One of the biggest organs that needs support with acne is the liver. And when the liver is not supported enough, we see a lot of inflammation. And this is because your liver is one of the main ways that we metabolize and eliminate toxins,
Yeah.
hormones, chemicals, things we don't need, even like toxic substances from bacteria that we kill off in the gut, they go through the liver, right?
Yeah.
So when the liver is not supported enough, or when it's super overwhelmed and you're experiencing a lot of issues where you need detox support, but you're not getting it, all
Mm-hmm.
of that stuff, all those hormones, all the chemicals, the toxins, the everything just is getting recirculated back into the bloodstream, back through the lymphatic system, and that would cause this chronic state of inflammation. And then we see acne.
Yeah.
The perfect
And
storm.
I'd love to share. I feel like again the whole detoxing of the liver and supporting your liver, that's also something that we've seen like pushed a lot these days for good reason, but I think you hear some pretty wild things on the internet of things that you need to do versus like what actually like as we were saying so like clearly at the beginning, like your body knows how to do it, right? Like it's its job. It's
Yeah.
just that sometimes in these situations where the due to all of the factors that we live in a day to day, like I like to think of like a little water cup, like at some point like it overflows and it just needs a little bit of support. And so I'm curious to know, like in your practice, like how do you recommend that people support that liver? I'm trying to debunk some of the things that we sometimes see online. I was like, what the heck is this? um yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's so much misinformation out there. I love how you just mentioned the water cup because this is something I love explaining to clients, and it's our toxic bucket, right? So
Yeah.
we're born with a toxic bucket, and when it starts to fill up and starts to spill over, that's when we start to see symptoms. And some people are born with a toxic bucket already full. These are kids we see with asthma, allergies, or maybe you got your period really young or your acne started really young. This usually just means your toxic load, it's too high,
Yeah.
it's overflowing. Where other people, it starts to hit in your 20s or your 30s or maybe even your 40s. And you're thinking, like, this is coming out of nowhere. Like, where did this come from?
Mm-hmm.
All that's happened is your toxic bucket has gotten
Is full.
full. We need support. And like you said, we live in a world where we are the generation actually that has been exposed to the most
I bet.
toxins, most chemicals, most pesticides of all time.
Yeah.
And luckily things are shifting and they are changing, but we're kind of experiencing those repercussions
Yeah.
from everything now. And
Yeah.
so it feels really frustrating when we're being told to do like a million things for our detox pathways and our health when really it's not our fault, right? We used
Yeah.
to be able to do all this on our own. Our liver should be able to detox on our own, like you said, but we need to work extra hard now given our lifestyle and environmental factors. It's
Mm-hmm.
really just as simple as that. So I think where we go wrong is on TikTok, we see so many things like around parasite cleansing or,
Yeah.
yeah, like liver detox when it's pretty complex. We have 2/3 unofficial phases of liver detoxification. Phase one is where we're kind of converting the toxins into less toxic versions of themselves. And then when you go into phase two, it is more of that removal. And then phase
Mm-hmm.
three is the actual elimination through stool. And so what happens is sometimes people are going into a liver detox by taking all these herbs, right? You're drinking all the
Mm-hmm.
detox teas, maybe you're doing a juice cleanse, but you're not supporting phase two or phase three of your detoxification pathways. So you're
Mm-hmm.
not getting enough nutrients. So these are things like B12 is really important. Like,
Yeah.
do you even have enough B12? Are you eating enough foods with B12? That's a really important part of detoxification. And then are you even having 1 to 3 healthy bowel movements per day? If you're not, that can all get backed up and it's just going to grow and create
And
problems
cause
in
more
the
problems.
gut, right? Like SIBO is a
Mm-hmm.
really common reaction to that. And so it's important that if you're going to support your liver and you're doing it on your own, do it gently. Do it in ways that are really natural, like movement, dry brushing, take an Epsom salt bath, go in the
Yeah.
sauna, right? These are all ways to naturally support your detox pathways through sweat, urine, bowel movements, like all these foundational things. Like, I actually think it's hilarious when people make fun of people. Like, you know what? There's like this classic thing with acne when people say, like, are you drinking enough water? right?
Yes.
And they're like, yeah, I roll, of course I am. Actually, no, most people are
Yeah.
not drinking
Drinking
enough
enough
or the right
water.
kind of water,
Yeah.
right?
No, for
Yeah.
sure.
So 2 to 3 liters is kind of what I like to look for. Most people are drinking, when they actually track it, they're drinking more like just under 2 liters, I'd say. And if you're looking to do any kind of liver support, you definitely need more on the 3 liter side and making
Yeah.
sure you're drinking like filtered water, adding minerals or electrolytes back into your water once a day. Really, really crucial for detoxification, for healthy bowel movements, even before you go and, buy the Candida cleanse kit or the parasite cleanse kit. You're just gonna feel worse if you don't
Yeah.
have these foundations going.
Yes, and I speak from personal experience. If you don't excrete all of that properly, I mean, it's just causing more disaster. And so actually, like, this is, I know people hate talking about it. I know people get squirmy talking about it, but I think it's such an important question to ask because so many of us, including myself, are in this situation where regardless of whether it's hormones, gut health, like, or a mix of all these things, like, we are very constipated, and like, it does come from stress, it comes from emotions, it comes from all of these things and a diet. And so I'd love to hear, like, again, like, I know people, like, it's not fun to talk about, but it is so needed, and we don't get warned enough of like what can happen if you're not like pooping properly. And so how does someone, like, I'm assuming, right? I'm gonna get into this in a second with you about like what you take your patients through kind of step by step and where to start. But clearly, like, it makes intuitive sense to me that like that would be one of the first things that needs to be like addressed, seeing as it's like your ability to flush out anything bad that you're going to remove in the process. So what are your top tips for someone in that environment where like, Cicely, I'm not pooping properly?
Yes, I think the first thing you can do is actually test your transit time. So, a lot of people, even if they are having a daily bowel movement, you actually still might be constipated. Even if your bowels are looser than
Mm-hmm.
not, you could still be constipated. And basically, constipation just means we aren't eliminating enough and we've got a lot of buildup, basically.
Yeah.
And a transit test, you can like literally pop this into ChatGPT. Like you can do it with beets or charcoal. There's lots of different ways to do it. But basically, you eat the food or take the charcoal capsules, and then within a certain period of time is when you want to see that in your stool. So you'll
Yep.
look in the toilet, you'll see is it red or black or whatever, and then you calculate that time. So it's just called a transit stool test, and you can do it at home. Pop it into ChatGPT or Google. You should get some answers there. So
Mm-hmm.
first find out like, do I have good transit time? Right. And from there, ask yourself, am I having those 1 to 3 daily bowel movements per day? If you are on the looser side and you're having loose bowels and maybe you are hitting that 1 to 3 per day, you want to make sure you're bulking up your stool with those complex carbs and more of those like resistant starches. So things like potatoes and rice are going to be really, really helpful. A lot of women aren't actually eating enough carbohydrates, and then we often see loose stools because of that. And so they're
Interesting.
losing a lot of their nutrients, right? When you have loose stools, you're usually losing your nutrients.
Yeah.
So we want to bulk that stool up, make sure it's not passing too quickly. So I would say if that's you, make sure you're having enough of those complex carbs, potatoes, rice, sweet potatoes, bananas, oats, all the
Yeah.
things. If you're on the other side and you are too blocked up, maybe when you travel, maybe it's just like a daily thing for you. Sometimes I get clients who haven't pooped in like 3 days, and
Yeah.
I've even seen 5 days. It's like, it's terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Those foundations are actually going to move the needle more than any supplement will. So things like, are you sleeping 8 to 9 hours per night? How's your stress? Do we need to bring in some deep breathing? Maybe a daily walk? Do we
Yeah.
need to say no to more things? Right? Like spend
Mm-hmm.
more time at home. There was actually like a really famous trick that they taught us in school. This was so long ago, but one of our teachers, she said, I want you all to go home and I want you to clean out your closets. And I want you to notice if you have a bowel movement after. And every single one of us had a bowel movement after we cleaned out our
That's
closet
crazy.
because it was therapeutic, right?
Uh,
We reduce the stress, we clear out the old energy mentally. You feel like, okay, I can release now, take out the
that's
trash,
crazy.
right? Yeah. It just shows like the mind and gut connection is fascinating. And if you're having trouble with constipation, look at your lifestyle. Like, are you stressed? Are you drinking enough water? Are you going for a walk every day? But then also, of course, you can use nutrition to help you with that. And that's just really increasing your fiber. So, like lots of fruits and veggies. I think a lot of people are really scared of eating fruit these days. One of my favorite fruits for constipation is kiwi. So, research
Mm.
shows us that I think it's 2 kiwis per day really helps with constipation because of the high fiber and vitamin C content. So, those are such just some
Interesting.
like really simple hacks that I know it sounds too good to be true, but will make a big difference.
Yeah. For those listening, I mean, like one of the things that has very worked really well for me, and it's still not perfect because stress is hard to manage. You know, it is easy
Mhm.
to say, "Oh, manage your stress," but like doing that and also keeping up with day-to-day life, like I recognize, like if that's you and you're like rolling your eyes right now, like that is so difficult to do, and I'm still like with you in that, but having electrolytes each day has played like such a huge role for me in helping with that, and so I would recommend like it doesn't have to be anything fancy, but like if you're listening and you're not someone that has tried that yet, like that has been super impactful for me as well as all of the other things. Um, you mentioned a little bit earlier in your process of getting to the root cause, which I absolutely love. Like, I feel like this is such a theme of this podcast, whether it be like mental health root cause, emotional root cause, physical root cause. I think it is so important and so like underused in today's healthcare system, especially in Canada for those that live here. Um, but you talked a lot about using functional testing in your practice. And I'm curious, as someone who also lives in Canada, access to these varies like based on country, but how do you go about like actually being able to offer that to your patients? Is it something that someone needs like a provider to prescribe? Like how does it all work? I'm anticipating the questions that I'm gonna get afterwards.
Yeah. For you, so basically, how does someone work with me? Yeah.
Yes, but also when it comes to like the testing side of it, I know that in
Yeah.
Canada specifically, like some people are a little bit confused on how to even access functional testing.
Yes.
So I'd love a little bit more information of one, how does one do that? And two, what are you able to get from it that you might not get from a more traditional lab work, stool test, etc.
Yes, this needs to be talked about more. So I'm so happy you brought this up. We live in a very broken medical system where we are basically, we assume that we can get all of the support we need for our health from the conventional medical system, which just
Yeah,
isn't an option anymore.
yeah,
They're doing their best, they're understaffed, the funding's in the wrong places. Everyone has really good intentions, but we need more resources for
mm-hmm,
support. And luckily, a lot of insurance companies are recognizing that we can get support from naturopathic doctors, nutritionists, dietitians, physios, all the things, but it's
mm-hmm,
still not recognized in like universal
yeah,
healthcare, right? It's more of like an
yeah,
extension. So
mm-hmm,
it can feel very daunting when you're doing this on your own and your only resource is going to your GP and they're just prescribing you Accutane or a birth control pill or whatever.
yeah,
It can feel very frustrating. And I've
mm-hmm,
been there, so I get it.
yeah,
We're really lucky where we have a lot of resources out there now, like social media, like my Instagram page. I post a ton of free information on there
yeah,
just to help people understand and get the conversation going, that they have options. So basically, I am now so booked up. Like, I'm booking into June. I wish I could help everybody. It's like my life goal to work with everybody. But unfortunately, there are so many people. I think there's like 50 million. I think I have that statistic right. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's either 30 or 50 million people in the US each year have acne, which is
wow,
insane. I think in Canada it's about 5 million. So it's wild. So there's tons of people that need help, right?
yeah,
And so what I did was I took my 10 years of practicing in this industry,
mm-hmm,
and I put everything I know that has worked on a foundational level to reduce the inflammation to clear skin. So whatever is going on, like if it's a gut thing, a hormone thing, a stress thing, whatever, I put it all into one guide called the Acne Protocol. I get everyone started on this because foundationally, it is really important that we're supporting your detox pathways. We're reducing the inflammation. We're getting your nutrients up. Because, like we just said, if we go and we do a gut test, we find a parasite, but you're not pooping every day, your minerals are super low, your immune system is really not doing well, you're going to feel awful and your skin might get worse, right?
yeah,
So, foundations are absolutely crucial. So, that's why I created that. That is like the number one first step, no matter what we're doing, what kind of tests we're doing. people
Yeah.
can get very excited and very keen, but I always tell them patience is your best friend here.
Yeah.
There's no point in diving into something if we're not ready to get the answers. So we usually start with that. The thing with functional testing is it is harder to find in Canada and the US. There are a lot of
Hmm.
practitioners like me who can offer functional testing who've done extensive programs. So I did an extension to my program. Um, I did a functional testing training. So I
That's
offer
cool.
yeah, it's been really
I didn't even
helpful and
know it
really
existed.
insightful. Yeah, it was really cool, a cool addition to my education. So I offer the GI map, which is a gut health test, and
Yeah.
that is usually what we'll do after about 3 months of foundational work, which you probably did for your SIBO.
Yeah, still in the process. It's one of these things, and I guess it's a good time to share it because I'm sure like people can see themselves in this, but I feel like a lot of these things, when you come to that point where then the water starts to overflow out of your cup, it's like opening Pandora's box, and it's just one thing
Mm-hmm.
after the next, after the next, after the next, and then you start on one path and it leads you to something else that's more urgent to
Yeah.
figure out first. So in my case, it started off as being like a very drastic SIBO diagnosis, like chronic
Mm.
fatigue. My hair was falling out. I was sick all the time. Like very scary stuff. And I share that not to scare people, but just to know that this can happen. And I was so super, super fortunate to find a naturopath that really took it seriously and took it into her hands and worked very closely with my GP, who up until this point thought I was just doing fine, which that's a conversation for another time. But I worked very closely with a naturopath, and we dealt with the SIBO kind of drastically. I did a mixture of like natural things and antibiotics because the situation just called for that. It was really severe. And I mean, at some point, like, I know people have different opinions about it. It worked really well for me. And so from there, when we started working more on the foundational stuff, the food stuff, I tried the autoimmune protocol. I tried all of these things that like to try and create a good foundation. And unfortunately, like I know this diet is being really pushed right now. We see it. It's cute. It's like seeing working miracles. It's working really well for some people. I think a side of it that's not addressed enough is that if you do have a history of disordered eating, like this is so not for you. And up until this point in time, like I had not been very honest with myself about how disordered eating my eating had been in the past. And so when I was faced with this diet that was going to be solving all my problems, like it just was not the right fit for me and made things worse rather than better, which just goes to show like it is so individual. And I really urge people to like not try and just copy what they're seeing online, but really like work through it with a professional because it was so needed. So yeah, long story short, it was a long like yo-yo of food, and then through blood work we discovered anemia and all of these things. And so I am still so much in the process of trying to set up my very firm foundations for myself. Like my gut health is still not doing wonderful. I am still constipated. I'm still dealing with the mental health side of things a lot. So yes, I'm still in the process of creating my foundation, but like so with you that unless you do that, like you cannot move forward, right? So I haven't had the privilege of doing the GI map test yet because the rest isn't working, right? So like it will come, but I am trying to focus more on the food and the everything else first.
Yeah. I love that. It's so, so important. And I honestly think these things are like a blessing and a curse because
Yeah.
they, like you said, uncover so much of what's going on internally. But on the other hand, you realize oh my gosh, we've got a lot to work back from. And a
Yeah.
lot of women who've like dealt with acne their entire lives don't realize that like they want the magic fix, right? They want the pill.
Yeah.
They're like, what supplement do I take to make this go away? And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like you've had acne for 15 years. This is going to take a bit of time. We have to be
Yeah.
patient and uncover
Yeah.
things one at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure. So I guess like that is a good thing to share of like Rome wasn't built in a day, and like for anyone like embarking on this journey, whether it is like acne or something else, like man, it's a long game, but it's a long game that is so worth it. um and it kind of brings me to the part where I wanted to talk about kind of if someone is working with you. Obviously the wait times are now so long because you're so good at what you do. But for someone who's like maybe waiting for that or looking for a more like where could they can start at home. The acne protocol is a great place to start, and without like obviously giving anything away from there because you worked very hard to create this resource. Where can someone start? If it's like, Cicely, I just want to take like one good step today, what is that step going to be? Where can I start?
Yeah, so definitely head over to my Instagram because I share so much information on there. Like you can pick any one of my videos and be like, okay, I'm going to start with this
Yeah.
today. I just posted a video on like swapping out your household cleaning products, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If that feels exciting and easy for you, start there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the acne protocol is obviously great. But if you're like, you know what, I'm not even ready to invest in that yet. I just need something really easy. I created a $19 guide. It's a 7-day clear skin plan. It is so easy to implement and it's fun. It's got fun recipes. It's educational. It shares a little bit of everything just like to get into that groove because sometimes we do just need something to like kickstart the journey.
Yeah.
Like we just need some healthy habits to get going, to get us back on track before we take the next step. And it
Yeah.
instills confidence in ourselves, right? We have to remind ourselves we can do this. We are capable of putting in the work. And the beginning can feel a little bit uncomfortable if we do it too quickly. So it's
Yeah.
good to ease into it, start small. It really is this foundational stuff that is absolutely crucial. Like I cannot get that message across enough. Like
Mm-hmm.
before you rush to get any kind of testing done, get back to these foundations. Like, let's see what we can do just with a bit of diet and lifestyle change. Like,
Yeah.
we might not even need to test you, right? Like, there's a
Yeah.
lot we can do before that. Yeah.
No, for sure. I love that. And I know we've spent the entire episode telling people that they need to do the inner work, but I understand that someone might also want the topical product advice of like, okay, well, how do I know if a product is causing me acne? Is there anything that I should be looking out for that topically might like reduce some of the inflammation that I'm seeing on my skin? Is there any general advice that you can give to people in the actual topical skincare makeup area?
Yes. So this might be a bit controversial, but from everything that I've seen, I think the number one most important thing with topical skincare is supporting the skin barrier
Mm-hmm.
function and the skin's microbiome and not stripping the skin's barrier. And we see this a lot with a lot of prescribed topicals. So we'll see a lot
Mm-hmm.
of like acids, we'll see like tretinoin, we'll see a lot of things that are peeling that dead skin cell layer away, which is like a natural exfoliation, which can be really, really helpful for some people for sure. But if we're looking to actually calm the inflammation down and reduce that redness and really just like allow your skin to fend for itself, like get that glow back, we need to add in those nourishing, calming ingredients. So I share a lot about skincare on my page as well, like certain products I think are really helpful.
Yep.
I'm also known as the Manuka honey girl. I'm like the Manuka honey
Really?
queen. So
Oh
for
my
about 10
gosh.
years, I've been preaching a Manuka honey mask. So
Okay.
honey traditionally is used topically in acne clearing for a very long time. But when I went and lived in New Zealand in 2018, I learned from the locals that everybody uses Manuka for everything. It is the most
Really?
incredibly powerful, potent superfood. It's amazing. And the Manuka honey bees, they'll pollinate the Manuka plant and then the benefits go into the honey. And
Mm.
using that topically as a mask is like the most amazing all-in-one because it's naturally antibacterial. So it's helping to kill off any topical infections, like if there's any staph overgrowth or if there's any imbalance on the skin topically, which we often see with inflammation
Mm-hmm.
internally. It will do that. It'll also help to heal up any scarring like hyperpigmentation or help heal the wound quicker. And, you know, a
Mm-hmm.
pimple is basically a wound, right? It's like an
Yeah. Yeah.
infected wound. So it'll do that. And it'll also help to restore the skin's natural microbiome as well. So it'll help kill off the bad guys while keeping the good guys. So, and it's exfoliating as well. So basically, you're kind of getting everything in one
Everything
product.
in
I'm
one.
like, if you're going to start anywhere, start with a Manuka
Start
honey
there.
mask.
Wow.
Best thing ever, best investment you could make. And from there, focus on like nourishing versus stripping the skin barrier.
Yeah.
So if you're worried about an ingredient being pore clogging, I love the Clear Stem website. They've got a pore clogging ingredient list checker. Obviously, take everything with a grain of salt because sometimes a product will have like one pore clogger. It might not be a big issue
Yeah.
for you, but if there's like more than one, it might be,
Yeah.
considerably making a difference. But yeah, I think
And
it's a good
this might
place to
be a
start.
hot take, but I would love your opinion on beef tallow. I feel like we have seen it blown up. And I'm all for the natural skincare stuff, like so open to so many different things. I personally have seen a big difference in switching to more non toxic products. In my experience, that's worked well for me. I can't speak for everyone. Um, but what are your thoughts on beef tallow?
Yeah, I knew this question was coming. I mean, it's a tough one, right? Because so many people swear by it and they're like, it
Mm-hmm.
cleared my acne, where there's so many other people on the flip side saying it made my acne so much worse. It clogged my
Yeah.
pores. It made everything more inflamed. I'd say, like, if it were me, I would not risk it because there is like a 50-50 chance that it could
Yeah.
get better, it could get worse. And usually when it gets worse with beef towel, it gets really bad. Like we see like really big flare-ups.
Yeah.
So instead of that, I love just like a pure squalane oil, like
Yeah.
100% squalane oil. The Ordinary sells it for like $10. That is totally acne safe. It's nourishing. It's simple. It's one ingredient. If you really don't want to use any complex products and you want something that's like super kind of like dense, like a beef
Yeah.
tallow, try squalane oil. See how that goes for you. Yeah.
Good tip. I love that.
Mhm.
Awesome. So I'm going to close off with two of our more general, I ask every guest at the end of the podcast. I know we didn't touch too much on it today, but one of the big themes of this podcast is mental health. I think for me in this entire journey of health stuff, like the biggest thing, the biggest eye opening, way more than like even the physical health, was just the impact that your mental health has on your everyday life. And I know it looks different for everybody. So I'm always curious to know what each guest does to take care of their mental health on a weekly, daily basis.
Well, the book You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay changed my
Love that
life.
one. Yeah,
Such a good
I
book.
love
Everyone
that
needs to
one.
read that book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that one
really good.
changed my life. I mean, it's always evolving, it's always changing for me. And when you're dealing with health issues, which I currently am, if you follow me on social, you'll know I'm going through mold toxicity right now, which has
Oh
been
gosh.
wild. But I've now become a bit of like a mold expert, which is really fun.
Yeah.
It's really tough, right? Because you are working extra hard just to take care of yourself. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the biggest thing I've learned is to accept where you are in your life. Not every season is going to be really expansive and fun and like energy filled. Sometimes we're going to need those phases of hibernation, and it's just an invitation to set those boundaries, prepare more time, for yourself at home to nourish yourself.
Yeah.
Um, that's honestly what I would say is just have grace with yourself. Like you don't always need to be rushing, or be perfect.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. And couldn't agree more on the book. My last question for you, obviously the title of the podcast is What Moves You? Throughout this health journey of mine, this is a question that I came back to often in the days where I felt like I was relearning who I was and what I liked to do, because so many of the things that I did used to love, like my body and mind, like could not keep up with anymore. And, I'm sure you can relate, like when you find yourself in that kind of debilitating place of like not knowing what the next step is because you're so like focused on these health things that aren't going well, it's so easy to drown in that. And I
Mhm.
found that this question that I came back to, or tried to come back to very often, reminded me to look not only for the big things that move you forward, but also the small things that bring you joy each day, whether it's a cup of coffee, like a walk on the beach in the sun. Like, I'd love to hear what those things are for you, whether it's big or small. What moves you?
Yes, I love that. I mean, from like a motive standpoint, I'd say like I'm always really inspired by all the women who are struggling, and I've been exactly where they are. Like I've been
Yeah.
there. I know that feeling so well. It's so real that I never want to stop doing what I'm doing because it, people need to know that they can have support and that it
Yeah.
exists. So I think that's like my biggest driver. No matter what my life looks like, I will always share in some capacity to help women. But I would say I love how you said like taking a walk on the beach, because I'm one of those people that every time I'm in nature, I am like a completely different person. Like my nervous system is so calm.
So
And for me,
calm.
that is being in the ocean and being on the beach. And so I would encourage anyone who's listening, if you have that one thing that like again really moves you and really drives you,
Hmm.
like just prioritize it over everything else. Like make it a non-negotiable. And I'm gonna hold myself accountable to this because I'm about to go to Australia in 2 weeks.
Oh,
And
wow.
you know what? I'm just like every morning I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna go to the beach because what else really matters than my mental health? Because then I can show up and be the best version of myself.
No, absolutely. I love that. And I'm going to close on that. I think that was a great place to end. Cicely, thank you so much. I know so many people probably learned so much today, and I am so grateful to get to have an hour of your time. That's really so, I feel really lucky and privileged to get to do that. So thank you so much. And for everyone that listened today, please go check out Sisley. I'll have all of her information in the show notes for easy access. But if you have any questions, feel free. The Acne Nutritionist on Instagram, I believe. You can DM her with any questions or myself. And we'll see you guys next Monday.
Thank you.